This is the first time ever that I have made it to Mythic in Constructed. I've mostly been a limited player, but then Timeless came out, and I thought, let's try it out. And I made it to Mythic with a Blood Moon Titan deck, which seems a little antithetical to most Titan decks. Most Titan decks do not like to see Blood Moon against them, and I wanted to theorycraft, could you do that? This was after having success with Blood Moon and Arclight Phoenix, which I started with in the format until I discovered that Arclight Phoenix is only okay in these days. So I went in with a Blood Moon. I wanted to bring in Blood Moon into the Titan deck and see if it worked, and it got me to Mythic. I'm currently mid-90s in Mythic and fluctuate up and down a little bit. Down a little bit from last night, where I was misplaying all over the place. But I think this deck has legs to be in upper 90s in Mythic. This is not a standard Titan list, as you can see right away from, well, the heavy addition of red into the Primeval list. As with other Primeval Titan decks, the main thing that you're trying to do is get Primeval Titan out on turn 3, turn 4, and start hitting people with 2/2 zombies off of Field of the Dead. This is often done with the help of Castle Garenbrig and Sunken Citadel, allowing you to get 6 mana with 4 lands, such they can hardcast Primeval Titan, or using Natural Order off of one of the many 1-drops to get to Primeval Titan. The ideal is that you get a turn 3, turn 4 Titan and start making zombies. The zombies quickly take over the game and win most of the games. I was struggling early on with the Titan decks, thinking that, and I kept running into the issue where I wouldn't have all the pieces, and my Titans were coming down turn 5, turn 6 because of disruption from the opponents, or because despite being a 28 land deck, I was missing land drops. I would mulligan to try to get that turn 3 or 4 Titan, and it just didn't work out. And so I switched things up, and that can be seen here in my deck choices now. Most of the Titan decks these days kind of use some redundancy with the help of Sylvan Scrying, or with the help of the Empath, the Elf Empath, Fierce Empath, to get Primeval Titans into hand, or Spelunking to get more land drops. I went the route of making sure that I had a 1-drop. I now have 12 1-drops, which the original Titan list only had the Arboreal Grazers and the Kamis. I wanted to make sure that I could continue to hit land drops to make sure that I had Primeval Titan early. This can continue to be seen in the 3-drop spot. Each of my 3 drops, a little odd, but each of them find more lands, or they produce mana through the form of treasure when we're looking at Captain Lannery Storm, or Klothys eating opponents' graveyards and the fetches that they're trying to use for their Deathrite Shamans. I went with this route to have more middle game, have more games against mid-range who were kind of taking over the board, and by the time the Titan came down, I was a little too late. This helps eat up resources from the opposing team, such that when Titan comes down, it takes over. And that's the goal. That's also the reason why there's a Minsc and Boo in here, is that this Minsc and Boo is another threat instead of the normal Titan. It allows for more games where you have early threats, this time in the form of a Planeswalker, which is harder to deal with. I felt with this package of middle game cards, I had more game against more decks, and I didn't have to heavily rely on these these early plays, making sure I had the Castle Garenbrig, making sure I had the Sunken Citadel, making sure I had the natural order, and that didn't kill off my 1-drops. This allowed me to have middle game and allowed me to have a turn 5 or 6 Titan that was still good. Some of the choices at the top end are a little strange. Bonehoard Dracosaur I've been back and forth with since I put it in here. I just kind of liked the card and wanted to see how it played, and I was surprised at it. When it stuck, it made sure that I won the game. It made sure that I kept drawing cards. It made sure that I kept getting farther into the game, making sure I find my Titans, find other pieces, when normally I would just be empty-handed. That's something I recognized early on with the Titan decks, is that they emptied their hands quickly with all their 1-drops dumping lands onto the battlefield. And so if you ran out of gas, well, you were just kind of top-decking. And top-decking when you have 28 lands really hurts, because you are often drawing, well, lands. You're not drawing the gas that you need to make sure that you can close out games. With the amount of disruption from Thoughtseize, I was finding me and myself in places where I just had nothing, and a Bonehoard would bring me back. It's odd as a 1-drop. I don't really want more, but I've been impressed when it does hit the battlefield. The others, Infernal Titan at the top, this is more to try to eat up the little guys. You can still ramp to it on turn 5, turn 4 even, and take out Deathrat Shamans, Bowmasters, Ragavans, or Jarsels. Really kind of get rid of the little creatures clogging up the board, or it can go and snipe Planeswalkers, which are causing problems from the opposing team, especially when we're talking about Ashioks. Make sure I can take down the Ashioks so the Primeval Titans can actually find their zombies. Titan of Industry is kind of a mainstay in Titan decks these days. The gaining 5 life is extremely relevant. The 4/4 creature gums up the board, destroying artifacts and enchantments that are making the zombies worthless, like opposing Blood Moons, or the tech these days that is making creature tokens -2/-2 will always make Titan of Industry a useful card in these Titan decks. Useful because you can natural order for them when you're in a tough spot and need that 5 life or need that enchantment gone. I do struggle sometimes with the 7 mana. I'm surprised that the 7 mana not being 6 is relevant. And because I am 2 colors, making sure I have red for my other cards, that triple green sometimes hurts. But overall, this does enough for the deck that I keep it in. Kogla has done a lot of work. I have been extremely impressed with Kogla. The Kogla coming down and trampling in to take down opposing planeswalkers is extremely relevant. Coming in to fight Tarmogoyfs that are threatening my life helps with that. I've sniped down Atraxas that have come onto the battlefield and been able to continue the game after resolved Atraxa. I have used the discard to get rid of opposing enchantments that are making my life, well, hell. I've taken out breach players' turns by destroying their breaches with this. I have been extremely impressed with Kogla and Yidaro. Being able to natural order for it has been a lifesaver on numerous games. And if anything from this deck goes forward to other people's decks, I would say the Minsc and the Kogla have made the biggest changes for the deck. I have recently put in Scavenging into the deck, and that's why I'm talking about it last, to really kind of gum up the board against Deathrat Shaman decks, trying to get rid of their food to that is ramping them, and trying to get rid of their food that is trying to kill me. This is also a concession to breach decks, which this deck is horrible against. Combo is the bane of the Titan decks. Titans, even if they come down on turn 3 or 4, still need to swing the next turn, and combo decks can be winning on turn 3. Closed out the game on turn 3, and they just go faster. The Scavenging Ooze has helped against some of those, especially the breach combo decks. That's also why the Klothys isn't in here. It is a multi-faceted card. It's a mana ramp. It pads the life total. It eats key pieces of other people's graveyards. It's rarely relevant that it becomes a creature. It just doesn't. The games don't go that long, so it rarely becomes a creature. And often this is what gets sideboarded out if graveyard management is not required. But it does enough on game 1 that I'm still happy with it. And the last thing they gotta talk about with any deck is the land situation. Maybe first, given though the lands are the way that this deck wins. The big thing that I did with the land situation here is recognize how many tap lands I had. That's why you only see 2 Sunken Citadels in here. That's why you only see 3 Field of the Deads. I was having so many games where I was locked out because I had too many tap lands, and I still do. That's why I'm down to 2 on the Sunken Citadels, even though this is a combo with Castle Garenbrig and guarantees that I have 6 mana for Primeval Titan. The Field of the Dead needing 7 land types has also been extremely relevant. To go down on the Sunken Citadels and the Castle Garenbrigs, I only have 1, 2, 3 cards that are multiples other than the field, because it was relevant that I wasn't getting zombies when a Primeval Titan hit the field, because I didn't have one-ofs of all of my lands. It made a difference in so many games that I really pared back the amount of tap lands and the number of different lands. That's why a number of different lands. I put 2 snow-covered forests because, well, it's better than basic forest, and because, well, look at it, it's snow. And also to give me more targets to when I do put Blood Moon in from the sideboard. The rest of the board, I'm trying to not have a lot of tap lands. So, tap lands that I do have, Jetmare's Garden, Sheltered Thicket, the cycling has been relevant on both of those, so I keep them. The gates to the Manorborn. So if we pull all of these tap lands over here, these mandatory tap lands, which cause issues in the game, trying to ramp early on. These are all the tap lands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tap lands in the deck. And then some that are situationally tapped, like Stomping Ground and Temple Garden, or Castle Garenbrig. The situational tap on the Castle Garenbrig, it does come up, because we don't always get our forests. But we try to with our 6 fetch lands available to us. This is as far down as I think I can go with the tap lands. These gates have been lifesavers because of it being a 28 land deck. Having the gates there to refill the hand, it refind threats when otherwise I have nothing going for me, has been a lifesaver. I and so I keep these tap lands despite them being tapped. Everything else doesn't come in tapped. The Hanweir Battlements has been... So now we look at some of the tech cards. The Hanweir Battlements, the Boseiju, the Khalni Garden. Really, it's just the 3 tech cards, other than what I've already talked about, the Castle Garenbrig, Sunken Citadel, and Field of the Dead. The Khalni Garden has been a huge help as another natural order target with that 0/1 plant. The Boseiju has been extremely relevant in to snipe specific artifacts and enchantments, and occasionally an opposing field. And the Hanweir Battlements, hasting in a Primeval Titan really closes down the game. So I always am fetching for when a Primeval Titan hits. I almost always get 1 field, 1 Hanweir Battlements, and then the next turn, if I have another threat in hand, that threat is now hasty and really closes out the game. Kind of similar to how current Titan decks are closing out the game with that other land that makes a 9/7 flying trampler lifelink. I have considered putting that in here as well, but due to my mana constraints with the red and the green, I've held back on too many more specialty lands. Last is the sideboard, which is kind of a unique part about this deck. We have the 3 Blood Moons, the kind of the namesake and the reason why I even made the deck in the first place. I had 4 at one point and came back to 3 because I don't know if Blood Moon is in the right place these days. It's great against opposing Titan decks. It's great against some greedy mana bases, but a lot of things can play around Blood Moon these days, especially the Death Rate Shaman decks are able to play around Blood Moon, and it's often not relevant. When it is relevant, it is one of the best things to be doing, and that's why I keep it here as a 3 of. This deck, I think, will do better in the future if there are more greedy mana bases that Blood Moon can target. Deafening Silence and Pithing Needle, I believe, are kind of common sideboard cards these days in Titan decks. The Deafening Silence is a concession to combo. Combo really feasts on Titan decks, and this is one of the few ways that we can fight against it. I don't like it so much in this deck, and I think if I do another iteration, I'm taking these out. More Pithing Needles, Stone Brain, some more artifact-based. I've even considered Leyline of the Void to have bullets that don't require other colors of mana. It really stretches this deck thin on colors of mana by having these 2 white cards in the sideboard. Pithing Needle has been good against opposing Planeswalkers and against Charbelcher. Can't really say much more about that. Veil's Summer, I'm down to 1, and mostly against Tendrils decks. I have been, every time I sideboard in Field of Slumber, at one point I had 4. I might get rid of this. The 1 of against Tendrils I'm considering and keeping, but every time it's in my hand, it gets Thoughtseized away. And turn 1 Thoughtseize, getting rid of Veil just is kind of worthless. It hasn't held up as well as I thought it would, and that's why I'm trimmed down to 1, and I might get rid of it in the future. Brotherhood's End has been a good sideboard against early plays from Lurrus decks or from Jund decks. This really kind of helps those matchups and kind of close out the game there. The Thrunes have been good against control. as has been the questing beasts, because they often are packing Uros, and questing beasts sneaking in to deal damage to Uros or Ashiaks have been extremely helpful. Questing beast is still a huge paragraph of text that does very well. And finally, another Infernal Titan in the board to kind of partner up with Brotherhood's End to shore up the mid-range matches. And that's the deck. That's what I've took to Mythic. It went through several iterations. If we look back at the beginning, I can see kind of a big shift from what I started. I thought Fable the Mirror Breaker would be amazing. I thought Explorer would be amazing. The drawing the cards and filtering to find Primeval Titans. But Fable is just a liability with Bowmasters running around. Fable is awesome when it sticks, and when it hits the last chapter and can copy Titans is one of the best feelings. But often Fable has been a liability in the face of Bowmasters. You can see that I went up on the 1-drops since this time point. The other iterations, that's when I went to the Halflings, really kind of wanting more 1-drops. I tried Lelia for a little bit, but I was finding that the extra card off of Lelia wasn't as relevant as the extra mana from the other 3-drops, so I ended up cutting it. And the more recent adaptation, adding in Inferno Titan, has been nice, but maybe not necessary to help the mid-range matches. I think we're already pretty decent on the mid-range matches, but this really kind of closes down the door and also helps once we have our Blood Moon on the field. Helps close out the games. So with that has been my Blood Moon Titan deck. Took it into Mythic, and I'm fairly happy with it. I think after this I might try a metagame kind of analysis based on what I've been seeing in Timeless. Right now, I think Titan decks are good. As a preview, I believe the Yawgmoth combo deck to be the deck to beat right now. That and the mono black decks with multiple Ashiaks. Those are the two next decks that I'm looking at to build after working with this. Thanks. Hope you learned something. Hope you like the deck. Try it out. And we'll see you next time.